Hello, and thank you for coming to my presentation on incels and counselling. The initial aim of this project was to prove that incels were not undergoing counselling and how counselling could help them explore their own ideas and to make themselves into the best person they could be. However, I was incredibly wrong in my initial hypothesis and found a much deeper and much more complex issue. The term incel has grown massively in usage over the past few years on the internet. This is mostly due to the 2014 Isle of Vista killings in which Elliot Rodger, a self-proclaimed incel, took the lives of 6 innocent people and injured 14 others, then took his own life before he could be arrested. The manifesto Elliot left behind was the first look for many people into an internet subculture that had been around for a decade. Since then, the subculture has grown and the word itself has lost a lot of meaning. However, it is still an effective insult online as the word still bears a heavy reputation with some people. The community has been likened to terrorist by people such as Dr. Charlotte Proudman, even though the community itself was birthed from people simply sharing their frustrations about their lives. So why does this community exist? To many, modern society feels incredibly sex-obsessed. Sex is being used to advertise anything from burgers to perfume, as if to say, our product will help you obtain sex, implying that being without sex is a bad thing or unnatural. This eventually spilled into mainstream culture, treating one's virginity as a rite of passage. The losing of one's virginity, specifically as a male, is being viewed as a big deal in Western countries, as the adult male virgin is often characterized as socially inept, slow, unattractive, or even to the point of completely unlovable. This has only been amplified by mass media in films and TV shows, such as the one advertised there, The 40-Year-Old Virgin, in which the title itself implies that there is something wrong with the main character. The main character is strange for being over 40 and still a virgin. He spends the entire film being used as a metaphorical punching bag. The methodology for this study is that of a survey. To gather primary information in this study, I used a survey and uploaded it to websites that are stereotypically known to house incels, such as 4chan or Incels.is. The reason I have chosen to focus on gathering primary information is because the subculture holds strong reputation for being divisive and hateful, leading to secondary information having preconceived biases, which then leads to confirmation bias. Whereas I would like to focus on the facts and the issues within the community, thus choosing to gather primary information. I then used thematic analysis to detect themes in the results and explained how and when therapy could be used to intervene. I also used these results and the overall societal sentiment towards the group to theorize why exactly therapy wasn't working. Secondary information will be used to back up the hypothesis I share, mostly from the study predicting harm among incels, the roles of mental health, ideological belief, and social networking, as the article writes what is the most similar to the lived experience I have as an ex-member of the community. So why a questionnaire? From the outside looking in, it's very easy to write off this community as just internet trolls or just horrible people in general because of their personalities. But this would be without the full stories or the context of the setting. For example, in this community, toxic behavior is rampant but normalized. Blatant racism and threats of harm are so commonplace that it's seen as a joke, usually for shock humor or an attempt to scare off normies. Context is incredibly important because it changes the way what is being said is perceived, so a questionnaire is an easy way to gather information about the context of the setting and how they generally communicate with each other. Despite how rampant racism is in the community, you can go to Incels.is and see that one of the top posts from when I made this study was about just generally gathering the amount of races were there. This community is widely diverse to a strange degree. I also chose to have an anonymous Google form and asked no questions that were likely to give away too much identifiable information, as this group is particularly reclusive and paranoid about their inceldom being revealed to the rest of the world, as it could risk their reputation with friends, families, and potentially their careers. Let's have a look at the mental health of the community. Due to the rite of passage and being born into a society where sex is normalized yet so difficult to obtain, being unable to have sex now is seen as a red flag, and that someone doesn't deserve positive regard because they have failed some basic test, leading to bullying, then isolation of these people. This new shame can cause severe mental distress, such as seasonal depression, 36% of responders, major depression, 46%, social anxiety, 52%, general apathy, 70%, and most notably, suicidal ideation at 56%. This leaves male virgins incredibly vulnerable to radicalization. I personally believe most of these issues can be solved with counselling and psychotherapy, so why is this not being used? As you can see on the side here, from the responses I got, unfortunately only 69, do any of these symptoms regularly affect your day-to-day life? Only 11.6 have reported no general kind of problems with their mental health, and everything else is incredibly high, with 23 reporting suicidal intent. This is dangerous. So why is counselling and psychotherapy not being used to solve these issues? To find out why counselling has not been an effective tool for incels, I created a survey and uploaded it to 2 websites. Like I said, stereotypically known to house incels, these being Incels IS and 4chan, specifically the board R9K. I was swiftly banned from Incels IS because I had a less than ideal exchange with an admin who would not let me post, as the website was strictly for incels only. The 4chan thread was well received, and 69 people gave me responses of varying quality. These are the first 2 questions in the survey, and just a general kind of culture shock that I had to seeing it. Have you ever tried counselling or therapy? It was split straight down the middle. Incredibly interesting. That is, even though 50% of them haven't tried, that is still higher than the national average. And the positive view of counselling and therapy, 63% of them had a negative view of counselling and therapy. These stats show us something is not working. From the first graph, it is abundantly clear that counselling and psychotherapy have been used by the community, in fact more than average, to very varying results. According to the BACP, around 30% of adults in the UK have accessed therapy at some point in their life, which is a very similar number from the US, which is 31% according to Forbes. There is already a large standout here, with the percentage of people accessing being much higher than the national averages. However, the main difference, and that I would like to emphasise on here, is that according to the BACP, 75% of people report that it was a helpful experience. Meanwhile, my findings report that an overwhelming majority of incels that have tried therapy found the experience unhelpful. Why is this not working? The first issue is UPR, unconditional positive regard. There is many reasons why this could not be working. 5 of the responses I got when I asked why they have a negative view of therapy had an emphasis on therapists being seemingly well-adjusted individuals who cannot empathise with incels if they haven't lived that experience. This demonstrates to me that their issues are not being taken seriously in sessions. Empathy can be very easily felt, even if you have not lived the same experience, and it is abundantly clear when someone is showing genuine care and positive regard. This means therapists are not taking incels' problems seriously, despite them being their job to do this. I would liken this to the negative reputation that this community holds, and these therapists being unable to separate their opinions from the people that they are currently speaking to. Similar to this, another common complaint in the responses was the counsellors not caring. Regardless of how trivial something may seem to someone, such as losing one's virginity or being unpopular with women, it is our jobs as therapists and counsellors to take people's feelings seriously and give them the strength to work through it. Why is this not working? Neurodiversity. Another reason for these feelings could occur is because talking therapies heavily rely on neurotypical thinking styles. For example, being able to clearly communicate feelings, being able to avoid burnout, and being able to change methods of selecting, processing, and interpreting information. This might not seem relevant to a subculture until you realise that a disproportionate amount of this community considers themselves to be on the spectrum. Therapy can be a difficult and daunting task for autistic people, so in a community of people where autism is not a minority anymore, but a majority, counselling would be logically seen in a negative light when they are not receiving the right care and treatment necessary. As it is seen on the graph here, 50% of people who got back to me on this were autistic. That is a majority. That is insane. That is autistic people for all of time have been minorities. This is the only community other than maybe competitive Pokemon where autistic people are the majority. Why is this not working? Toxic masculinity. 26 out of the 44 people who had a negative view of counselling and therapy have never actually attempted to try it. 6 of these reviews involve the insistence that therapy does not work on men, or that it is a soft science and gynocentric. These views are incredibly harmful. Not only do they parrot anti-intellectualism, but also misogynistic views that if, for whatever reason, a science is headed by women, it becomes invalidated, which then backs up the point of view that all incels are hateful towards women. This, however, conflicts with another question in the survey, in which the answers show that only 32% of incels consider their position as an involuntary celibate to be women's fault, in comparison to the 70% which take the blame for themselves. These findings imply that the bad reputation of the community is heavily skewed by a loud, misogynistic minority. A reasonable question. Why should you care? According to Samaritans, 1 in 5 people will experience suicidal thoughts at some point in our lives. However, according to Predicting Harm Among Incels, the Roles of Mental Health, Ideological Belief and Social Networking, 20% of incels have contemplated suicide every day for the past 2 weeks. It is incredibly clear that this community is more of a danger to themselves than anyone else. These are clearly people who, regardless of their personal beliefs or what they say, need some form of help. At 23%, this group experiences suicidal intent above the rate of the average person experiences suicidal ideation. It becomes abundantly clear that what we are witnessing is an unchecked mental health crisis in a group of people, and by casting judgment, by accident or on purpose, we as counsellors are further isolating a group that is already isolated, increasing their likelihood of radicalisation or suicide. What can we do? As counsellors, or as people, I suppose, I forgot this wasn't going to only counsellors. As counsellors, it is our duty to respect the needs of our clients and to take them seriously. We cast aside judgment to provide unconditional positive regard and believe that humanity, at its core, is good. However, these particular people are excluded from that experience, leading to them having disproportionately bad experiences with therapy for many reasons. To improve upon this, the counselling world as a whole must understand deeper themes and reasons behind why communities like this exist. It is incredibly easy to wave off something like this as people overreacting or ignoring overarching themes because other issues are more important. However, because other issues are more important, this does not make this problem simply vanish. These are still issues that need to be solved. Violence against women is a drastic issue that is deeply important. However, there is enough time in the world for us to take deep dives into multiple topics at once. Detach the crimes of extremists from the community. As counsellors, we are empathetic and progressive people. We know the impact that stereotyping can have. We do not judge religions nor race on the basis of their extremists, so this should be no different. Demonstrate true, unconditional positive regard, or refer. As stated before, I hypothesized that these people are not getting true unconditional positive regard. If you feel like these people are too problematic or dangerous for you, refer them to someone else with more experience with a group like this. Do not give them a mediocre counselling experience, either on purpose or by accident. Remember, every human being is capable of change. Treat online subcultures as seriously as we are treating physical offline cultures. From what I've witnessed growing up on the internet, barriers such as borders, languages, and cultural differences have melted away, creating what I theorize to be a new era of human culture. Although the incel community might be one of the most infamous subcultures, or the first you've heard of, it will not be the last. Online cultures can establish themselves faster and differentiate between one another at breakneck pace. Going forwards, especially when counselling Generation Alpha and Beta, a deeper understanding of these differences in these groups will become a necessary skill. It is important that we learn this now and be prepared for the future. And these are the references for what these things are. Some of these are kind of, not really important references, but some of these are very important references and further reading for you if you're interested in the entire thing. So that's the end. Thank you for watching. Maybe a normal video next time.